The Class 25NC, one of South Africa's most prestigious locomotives, powerful, economic, and most of all, it has amazing ease of operation. Built by Henschel and Schom, these large 484 locomotives entered service in 1950, and they're certainly impressive at any time on their 3-foot 6-inch gauge. Back in 1979, questions were being asked by the South African Railway management as to why the Deltics were costing so much to run, when steam was 2/3 less. Amid all this fuss, local mechanical engineer D. Wardale designed several modifications to some principles of engineer L.D. Porter of Argentinian Railways. The aim, as always, was to obtain more steam for less fuel and to utilize the steam with maximum efficiency. A standard 25NC was chosen to be rebuilt and modified. To this end, locomotive 3450 was selected for attention by the staff of South African Railway Mechanical Engineering Workshops at Salt River. Physical work started with the manufacture of new components at the end of 1979, preceded by 10 months preparation of detailed drawings and calculations at the South African Railway's headquarters at Pretoria. Other workshops, such as Bloemfontein, Beaconsfield, Kudesport, and Pietermaritzburg, were chosen for being best suited for their specific tasks and modification capabilities. It's well worth noting that during the entire period of these modifications, considerable interest and enthusiasm for the project was also shown by those directly involved at the shop floor level. Lessons that were learned on modifications previously carried out to a fire and smoke box of a Class 19D482 were incorporated on 3450, and a few new features were added. The primary objective was to improve combustion and the steaming rate, while at the same time reduce the emission of black smoke and overcome the problem of clinkering. This was achieved by the use of a single-stage gas producer combustion system. Basically, this relies on the gasification of coal on a low-temperature firebed. The gases then released are fully burnt in the area above the firebed. A minimum of air is introduced through the firebed, the main source of air needed for the main combustion area being drawn through ancillary air intakes above the firebed. Additional major changes included the lengthening of the smoke box to incorporate a double Lempore exhaust with an offset double chimney and a feed water heater between the chimneys. Redesigned valve liners are used, incorporating streamlined ports to the cylinders. The rings and liners are made of very hard chromium cast iron. Improved lubrication techniques are used to enable the oil to get directly to where it's most needed, and that's on the cylinder and valve rubbing surfaces. Other major modifications included increased superheaters, superheat booster, new piston valves, articulated valve spindles, new cooled valve liners, new cylinder liners, altered valve gear, Herdner starting valves, air sanding, altered self-cleaning smoke box, larger steam chests, direct steam pipes, improved pistons, improved valve and piston rod packings, variable stroke lubricator drive, improved insulation, and many other minor detail improvements. Calculations for the final dimensions of the Walschaerts valve gear were made on computer. The locomotive is fitted with continental European-style exhaust deflectors, curved round but not parallel to the smoke box. The coal capacity has been increased from 18 to about 20 tonnes. The total weight of the unit in full running order has been increased from 225 to about 230 tonnes. The locomotive has been designated Class 26. On Thursday, February 5th, 1981, all was ready for the initial steaming. The fire was lit at 10 a.m. Steam was raised some 3 hours later. And after a few steam leaks were dealt with, the locomotive made its first run of a few yards on the tracks inside the works. After a few adjustments, the locomotive was then ready for its initial trial trip. This was made the next day, running light from Salt River to Belleville and back again on the main line. That's a distance of about 12.5 miles. The only untoward event was an apparent shortage of lubricant in the cylinders on the return trip. This was eventually diagnosed as being caused by a faulty oil pump. Monday, February 9th, 1981, saw 3450, now bearing on its smoke deflectors the name of L.D. Porter, the Argentinian railway locomotive engineer, some of whose ideas and developments have been incorporated. 3450 emerged from Salt River Works with her red paintwork, shining brass and copperwork all gleaming, and sporting the South African Railways emblem on its tender. She was ready to pull her first train. The train was 3 coaches. One was a suburban swing-door passenger coach of somewhat antique lineage, and the other 2 were full brake coaches. They carried railway officials and staff on the electrified line to Dar Josephat, some 41 miles from Cape Town, where there's a triangle which enables the locomotive to be turned. Considerable interest had also been shown in the locomotive by the Cape Town media, which subsequently published colour photographs, dubbing it the Red Devil. South Africa is very aware of its dependence on imported fuel oil. Any project which can utilise locally available solid fuel, of which there's plenty, is always welcome. The journey to Dar Josephat and back was accomplished without mishap. The locomotive performed well. The South African railway personnel on the train all seemed very impressed and enjoyed their trip. These journeys were made without the brick arch being fitted in the firebox. This work being a function of the shed and not the works. Next evening, 3450 departed for Kimberley. She now had the brick arch fitted and her boiler had been washed out at Pardon Island shed. Tuning up work was done at Pretoria, while working between Pretoria and Witbank, a steeply graded line, by the way. Then 3450 returned to Kimberley and entered normal traffic, its performance to be fully evaluated during regular working. December 1981, and 3450 was released for regular service from its home depot. For the first 3 months, she was to be handled by 5 crews only, and during this time, coal and water comparisons were made against 6 25 NCs. The general public had the first real chance to sample 3450's performance on the 15th of December, when she was rostered for the Trans-Karoo Express, south to DR. Christmas holiday traffic was at its peak, and the Trans-Karoo was loaded to 19 carriages. An 81 minutes late departure was the challenge she needed to prove herself against the diesels, on what was otherwise an undemanding schedule for this train. 3450, with its lower coal consumption and ability to avoid fire clinkering, stood almost 3 hours sustained steaming. This was without cleaning the fire, so the performance is all the more remarkable for that.
The last GO in the dump at DR. Remains of a GMH.
Dave Wardale is to be congratulated on his outstanding achievement, especially in comparison to the much favoured General Electric diesels. One hopes that the results that this locomotive proudly achieved may perhaps lead to a revision of South African Railway's motive power policy.